Imagine that for nearly 2,000 years, fragments of words spoken by Jesus himself, words that carried messages about the fate of the world, about the great upheavals that would mark the end of an age, were carefully hidden away, suppressed, and even banned by those who claimed to guard the faith. Imagine that what you know as the Gospels are only part of the story, and that other texts, other visions, hold secrets about the end times, a future Jesus foresaw, but which the powerful sought to conceal. Think for a moment. What if the most important prophecies of all were deliberately erased from common memory? What if the message of Christ about the final days was far deeper, far more mystical, and far more terrifying than what you have been taught in churches? In this journey, we will uncover the forbidden, the veiled, and the silenced words that echo from the apocryphal Gospels, the Gnostic scriptures, and the banned revelations that speak of the destiny of humanity. Stay with me, because the last revelation we will explore is not only the most important, but also the most powerful, one that could change the way you see history, faith, and the very future of our world. Before we begin this deep exploration, I invite you to subscribe to this channel, leave your like and share this video with those who are seekers of truth just like you. Comment your thoughts as we go, because what we will discuss here might resonate with you in unexpected ways. I promise that in the next minutes, surprising revelations will come to light, and by the end, your vision of the end times and of Jesus himself will never be the same. Let us begin. To understand what was banned, we must first understand what survived. The canonical Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, offer glimpses of Jesus, warning of wars, famine, earthquakes, false messiahs, and cosmic upheaval. In Matthew chapter 24, we find him declaring that nations will rise against nations, that the sun will be darkened, and that the Son of Man will appear in the heavens with power and great glory. These passages have been debated for centuries, studied by theologians, and used by countless generations to interpret signs of their times. But outside the Bible, hidden in caves buried in the sands of Egypt or locked in secret libraries, other writings attributed to Jesus and his disciples present visions that are far stranger and far more mystical. The Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, and the Apocalypse of Peter are but a few of these. Many of these texts were deemed dangerous by the early church, not because they were false, but because they gave believers direct access to divine mysteries, mysteries that would weaken the control of authority. One such text is the Apocalypse of Peter, discovered in a manuscript in Egypt. Here, Jesus speaks privately to Peter about the fate of the world and the destiny of souls. Unlike the book of Revelation that made it into the Bible, this vision is different. It describes a cosmic struggle, a separation of souls not only by faith but by inner knowledge. In this prophecy, Jesus shows Peter the punishments of the wicked and the rewards of the righteous. But more than that, he reveals that truth itself would be hidden, distorted, and suppressed by those in power. He even warns that many will follow leaders who speak in his name but do not belong to him. Does that sound familiar? Look around you. How many voices claim to speak in the name of Christ today, yet preach division, fear, and control? Could it be that Jesus foresaw not only natural disasters and wars, but also the corruption of faith itself as one of the great signs of the end times? The Nag Hammadi Library, unearthed in 1945 in Egypt, gave us access to dozens of texts long thought destroyed. Among them is the Gospel of Thomas, where Jesus says, "The kingdom of God is within you and it is outside you. When you come to know yourselves, then you will be known, and you will realize that you are children of the living Father." These are words of profound mystical insight, pointing not to fear of an external apocalypse, but to an awakening within. Yet such teachings were considered dangerous. Why? Because they gave power to the individual seeker rather than the institution. Think about it. If the kingdom is within, then no priest, no church, no emperor can control your salvation. The apocalypse, then, is not merely about destruction, it is about unveiling. The Greek word apocalypsis literally means revelation or unveiling. The banned prophecies of Jesus may not be about the annihilation of the world, but about the unveiling of truth, the tearing away of illusions, and the exposure of deception. Now let me ask you, if the most powerful revelation is not about fire falling from the skies, but about awakening to the truth of your divine nature, why would such a message be silenced? Why would it be banned unless those in authority feared it more than any prediction of catastrophe? As we continue this exploration, we will uncover more of these forbidden teachings and prophecies, those that speak of the great deception, of spiritual awakening, and of the final confrontation between truth and falsehood. And remember, the last revelation we will reach in this journey is the most profound of all, one that was hidden for centuries but is now resurfacing to meet the eyes of seekers in our generation. The question is, are you ready to see what was hidden? The further we go into these hidden texts, the clearer it becomes that the Jesus of history and the Jesus preserved in official doctrine are not always the same. In the canonical Gospels, we see fragments of prophecy, wars, rumors of wars, the abomination of desolation, and the Son of Man coming on the clouds. But in the forbidden writings, we encounter something deeper, something more mystical and unsettling. It is as though Jesus was preparing his disciples not only for events on the outside, but for a spiritual war within the very soul of humanity. Consider the Gospel of Mary, attributed to Mary Magdalene, the disciple whom early sources claim Jesus loved and trusted above many others. In this text, she shares with the apostles visions given to her by Jesus after the resurrection. What she describes is not an external apocalypse, but the soul's journey through powers of darkness, ignorance, and desire. Mary explains that Jesus taught her that salvation is not won by following external law, but by overcoming the inner archons, the rulers of illusion that chain the soul to fear. Can you see the danger in such teaching? If true authority is found not in a hierarchy of men, but in inner knowledge and spiritual awakening, then the very foundation of institutional control collapses. No wonder such texts were banned. They reveal a Jesus who speaks not of blind obedience, but of liberation through knowledge and truth. And yet, is this not in harmony with what we find even in the Bible itself? In John chapter 8, Jesus says, "You shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free." Could it be that the secret prophecies of Jesus about the end times are not merely warnings of destruction, but revelations of how humanity must free itself from deception before the final unveiling? Let us not forget the Gospel of Judas, a text that shocked the world when it surfaced in modern times. Far from being the simple betrayer we were told about, Judas is presented here as someone who carried out a role given to him by Jesus himself. In this vision, Jesus laughs at the disciples when they misunderstand him, warning that many generations will worship in error, offering sacrifices to a false god. In the eyes of many scholars, this is a staggering claim, that Jesus foresaw his own message being twisted, his followers misled, and entire institutions built on foundations that were never his. If this is true, then the great deception of the end times may not come from outside enemies, but from within religion itself. Think carefully. If Jesus warned that false messiahs would arise, is it possible that entire systems of belief could themselves become false messiahs? If he foresaw that many would come in his name, but not belong to him, could this be the prophecy the Church never wanted you to examine too closely? The scholar Elaine Pagels, one of the foremost authorities on Gnostic texts, once wrote that these hidden Gospels reveal a struggle over what it truly means to be a Christian. Was it about following an institution, or was it about direct spiritual knowledge? In the forbidden prophecies, Jesus consistently points to awakening, to the revelation of truth, and to the exposure of lies. And what greater unveiling could there be than to realize that much of what was taught in his name was not his teaching at all? Now let us return to the theme of the end times. In the Apocalypse of Peter, Jesus warns of a time when leaders will be corrupt, when they will oppress the poor, when they will love wealth and power while claiming to be shepherds of the flock. He describes them as blind men leading the blind, building temples for their own glory. Can you not see these words echoing in our modern world? Scandals, corruption, greed, all under the cloak of religion. Could this be one of the signs of the last days that Jesus foresaw, but which was silenced, because it struck too close to home for those in power? The idea of the end times is not merely about catastrophe, it is about exposure. The Greek word crisis, from which we get crisis, also means judgment or decision. It is the moment of separation, when truth is separated from lies, when light and darkness are no longer confused. The banned prophecies of Jesus paint a picture not just of external disasters, but of humanity facing a decision, to remain enslaved to illusion or to awaken to the truth that was hidden within them from the beginning. I want to ask you something. When you look at the world today, wars, economic collapse, moral confusion, and the rise of voices claiming to own the truth, do you not feel that we are living in the very days that these hidden prophecies warned about? Could it be that we are standing on the threshold of the unveiling, the apocalypses that Jesus foresaw? But there is something more. The Gospel of Thomas records Jesus saying, "What you look forward to has already come, but you do not recognize it." This enigmatic saying has puzzled scholars and mystics alike. Could it mean that the end times is not a distant event, but a present reality unfolding before our eyes, waiting only for those with spiritual vision to perceive it? If that is true, then the great unveiling is already here, and those who awaken will see while those who sleep will be swept away in fear. Stay with me, because in the next part we will go even deeper into the most suppressed revelations, prophecies that describe the final confrontation between light and darkness, between the true teaching of Jesus and the false systems built in his name. And as I promised, the last revelation we will reach together will be the most powerful, one that carries a key for every seeker of truth in our generation. The question is not whether the end times are coming. The question is, will you awaken to see them for what they truly are? Throughout history, humanity has feared the signs of the end times, wars, plagues, earthquakes, and celestial upheavals. But what if the true essence of Jesus' forbidden prophecies is not simply about events in the outer world, but about forces moving in the spiritual realm, forces that seek to enslave humanity through deception, distraction, and fear? When we examine the banned texts with open eyes, a striking theme emerges. The greatest danger of the final days is not physical destruction, but spiritual blindness. Take the Apocalypse of James, a text hidden for centuries and found among the Nag Hammadi writings. Here Jesus tells James that rulers of this world, both earthly and spiritual, will attempt to capture the souls of men through lies. He warns that only those who have awakened to the inner light will escape their grip. Notice how different this is from the external apocalyptic visions many of us grew up with. This is not merely about mountains falling into the sea, but about rulers of illusion tightening their chains on humanity. The prophecy is clear. The true apocalypse begins inside the human soul when men and women either awaken or remain enslaved. In the Gospel of Thomas, another enigmatic statement appears. If those who lead you say, "The kingdom is in the sky," then the birds will get there before you. If they say, "It is in the sea," then the fish will get there before you. But the kingdom is within you and it is outside you. This teaching turns the entire notion of salvation upside down. Instead of looking to an institution, a leader, or a temple, Jesus directs seekers to look within. In the context of the end times, this is revolutionary, for it implies that the final judgment is not external fire, but the unveiling of whether one has truly found the kingdom within. Now consider the implications of such words in the early centuries of Christianity. If salvation and the unveiling of truth are found within, then the authority of bishops, priests, and emperors is irrelevant. The apocalypse becomes the great equalizer, stripping away the illusions of earthly power. No wonder these texts were banned. They were too dangerous for empires built on control. But the banned prophecies of Jesus also speak of cosmic signs. In the Apocalypse of Peter, Jesus shows visions of the heavens being shaken, stars falling, and the earth trembling. Scholars such as Bart Ehrman have noted that these apocalyptic visions were not meant merely as predictions of events, but as symbols of the collapse of corrupt systems. When the stars fall, it is not only the heavens, but the rulers of nations and institutions losing their place. In other words, the cosmos itself testifies to the downfall of those who rule by deception. Think for a moment about our modern world. Political leaders collapsing under scandal, religious institutions shaken by corruption, economies falling like stars from the sky. Could it be that we are living in the very fulfillment of these prophecies, not as a distant future, but as a reality unfolding before our eyes? Another powerful text is the Apocalypse of Adam. In it, Adam tells his son Seth about a great flood of fire and destruction, but he also reveals a Redeemer who will come bringing hidden knowledge, freeing souls from the powers that enslave them. Some scholars have argued that this Redeemer is none other than Jesus, and that his role in the final days is not simply to destroy, but to awaken. Fire and destruction may symbolize not only external chaos, but the purging of illusions from the soul. Now let us pause and reflect. If the end times are not simply about physical disaster, but about unveiling truth and exposing deception, then perhaps we are already in the midst of them. Every day we see illusions collapsing, false leaders exposed, lies revealed, systems of control breaking apart. Yet at the same time, we see new illusions rising, new deceptions taking hold. Could it be that the true battle of the apocalypse is not fought with armies, but with truth against lies, light against darkness, awakening against sleep? Jesus himself seems to have predicted this. In Matthew chapter 24, he warns, "For false Christs and false prophets will arise, and will perform great signs and wonders, so as to mislead, if possible, even the elect." Now compare this to the Gospel of Judas, where Jesus warns of entire generations worshipping a false god, believing they are serving him. Both prophecies point to the same conclusion. The greatest danger is not war or famine, but deception. Humanity will be led astray by powerful voices claiming to represent God, yet their message will be built on lies. Ask yourself this: how many today follow leaders who promise salvation, prosperity, or certainty, yet manipulate, deceive, and enslave? Could this be the very deception Jesus foresaw, the deception that marks the beginning of the end? And yet, there is hope woven through these prophecies. In the Gospel of Thomas, Jesus promises, "There is light within a man of light, and it shines upon the whole world. If it does not shine, it is dark." The end times, then, are not merely about destruction, but about choice. Will we allow the inner light to shine, or will we be swallowed by darkness? The forbidden prophecies of Jesus point us again and again to this truth. The apocalypse is the unveiling, the great exposure. The deceivers will be revealed, the illusions stripped away, and humanity will face the ultimate question: will you awaken or remain asleep? In the next part, we will arrive at the final and most powerful prophecy, the revelation that ties all of these threads together, a vision so dangerous to the powers of the world that it was buried, banned, and hidden for centuries. A prophecy not only about the end times, but about the rebirth of humanity itself. The unveiling is not coming. The unveiling is here. The only question that remains is, will you have eyes to see it? The final and most powerful of the secret prophecies attributed to Jesus is not about destruction, but about transformation. It is not about the annihilation of the world, but about the birth of a new one. And this, perhaps more than anything else, explains why it was hidden, silenced, and banned. In the secret book of John, discovered among the Gnostic texts, Jesus reveals to John visions of the archons, the rulers of illusion, who keep humanity blind to its true nature. But he also reveals that these powers will not prevail forever. He promises that a great awakening will come, when humanity will remember who they truly are. Children of the living God, sparks of divine light trapped in matter, destined to rise once more into freedom. This is the true apocalypse, the unveiling of our divine origin and destiny. Think of the magnitude of this teaching. If humanity were to awaken to its true identity, no empire, no church, no ruler could control it. Fear would lose its grip. Death itself would lose its terror. What power would wealth or tyranny have over those who know they are eternal? Can you see now why such a prophecy would be banned? It undermines every earthly throne. Even within the Bible, fragments of this truth remain, though often overlooked. In Luke chapter 17, Jesus says, "The kingdom of God does not come with observation, nor will they say, 'See here,' or 'See there,' for indeed, the kingdom of God is within you." When paired with the forbidden Gospels, the meaning becomes clear. The end times are not about waiting for a distant future, but about realizing that the kingdom is already here, hidden within, waiting to be revealed. The scholar Marvin Meyer, who dedicated his life to translating the Gnostic texts, explained that these writings challenge us to see apocalypse not as catastrophe, but as unveiling. The veil of illusion is torn away, and humanity sees the truth of its divine nature. This is the secret prophecy. The true danger is not the destruction of the world, but the refusal to awaken to who we truly are. Let us return to the words of Jesus in the Gospel of Thomas. "When you come to know yourselves, then you will be known, and you will realize that you are children of the living Father." This is the hidden key. The end times are the time of knowing, the moment when humanity must awaken or perish in ignorance. The apocalypse is not only an ending, it is a beginning. The old world of lies crumbles, and a new creation begins. But there is a warning. The Gospel of Mary describes the struggle of the soul against powers of ignorance, desire, and wrath. These are not mere symbols, they are forces that act within us and in the world around us. To awaken is to confront them, to strip away their hold on the soul. The end times are not simply global, they are personal. Every soul will face its own unveiling, its own judgment, its own apocalypse. And so the most powerful prophecy of all is this: the end times are not a punishment imposed from above, but a revelation arising from within. The veil will be lifted, illusions will shatter, and every soul will stand before the truth of who they are. For some, this unveiling will feel like fire and destruction, the collapse of everything they thought was real. For others, it will feel like liberation, light, and rebirth. The difference lies not in the world outside, but in the soul within. Look again at the world today. We see chaos, division, and fear spreading like fire, and yet at the same time we see more seekers than ever before, searching for wisdom, questioning authority, looking within for truth. Could it be that the apocalypse is already here, unfolding not as a single catastrophic event, but as a great unveiling happening in our time? Jesus warned in the banned Prophecies that deception would dominate the last days, that many would follow false teachers, and that systems of power would twist his message for their own ends. But he also promised that the truth could not be hidden forever. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness cannot overcome it. This is the hope of the final prophecy, that no matter how strong the forces of illusion may seem, they will fall, and the truth will prevail. So now I ask you, are you ready to face the unveiling? Are you ready to strip away the illusions of fear, control, and deception, and awaken to the divine light within you? For the end times are not only about the world, they are about you. The hidden prophecies of Jesus tell us that the apocalypse is the moment of choice. Will you remain blind, following the voices of deception, or will you awaken, see with the eyes of truth, and step into the kingdom that has always been within you? This is the prophecy the church feared. This is the truth that empires tried to silence. But no power can suppress it forever, for the unveiling has already begun, and every soul is being called to choose. The end is not destruction. The end is revelation, and revelation is the beginning of a new creation. Thanks for looking.